On the outside, my life was absolutely perfect, and yet I was the most miserable I've ever been in my life.
Why do you think that is? Today we are sitting down with Mimi Ikonn, a global entrepreneur, mother, and advocate for intentional living.
Any business you're gonna do, quote unquote, it's gonna be hard. What are my values? Who am I? What am I here to do? I want to raise my child in a way where she sees me authentically showing up for myself first.
Author of transformative 5-minute journal, Mimi has inspired millions to embrace mindfulness, gratitude, and a balanced approach to life.
You get to tell your own story, you get to write your own story, you get to write your own book of values that you're gonna live by. In life, you need to get yourself sometimes to a place where you quit the job or you leave your marriage. It's almost like you have to put yourself in an uncomfortable position where you have no choice but to grow and expand. If you're too comfortable, you're not gonna take the plunge. For the first time in my life, I experienced quite strong depression, anxiety, panic attacks. Where is this coming from? Is this my thoughts or this is a conditioning? How do you break the person's heart that you love so much?
Welcome to Do Not Disturb, the Inside Story. I'm your host, Simona Devta.
What a beautiful introduction. Thank you so much for having me here today, Simona.
So good to have you. We already chatted before, and I feel like this conversation is just gonna flow. I think it's always very important to get to know our guests before we dive into all sorts of questions. So could you just tell us a bit about yourself?
Such a big question, isn't it? Where do I start? Well, I'll go all the way back to my childhood. Originally, I am from Baku, Azerbaijan. I grew up during the times when Azerbaijan was still under USSR. So I grew up speaking Russian and being exposed to so many different cultures. And I really love that about my upbringing. My mom would take us to churches and mosques and synagogues. We were exposed to everything. And I just love an upbringing where you are not, in a monoculture, where you see other people living life differently. And as far as I can remember myself, I've had this insatiable desire to get out of Azerbaijan and go and explore the world, and also to see how other people live life and dream big. I can remember myself being little and looking at the airplanes passing by in the sky and thinking one day I'll get on an airplane or fly to all these exotic places and explore and learn and expand. And growing up in a country like Azerbaijan, in fact, I didn't get a chance to get on an airplane until I was 16. And that's when my family decided to immigrate to Canada. So when I was 16, I moved to Toronto. Typical immigrant, experience. My parents had to start from zero. I started working as early as 16, at a fast food restaurant. Then I got an internship at a bank. Then I was working in restaurants, going to college. So supporting my parents as well and learning the resilience of starting from zero. And yeah, it was a lot of hard work. It still is. I think when you're trying to build yourself and expand and constantly find a way to grow as a human being, as a woman, as a soul, you'll always put yourself in situations where you're outside of your comfort zone. And I'm very grateful for my parents who, took the plunge and immigrated from Azerbaijan to Canada. As a child, I was 16 when we moved. You don't realize, you're just excited that you're moving somewhere new. But now as an adult, I realize how much courage it took for them to leave everything behind and start a completely new life. And I'm so grateful for them that they have done that, because I feel like everything that came after came as a result of their
It was definitely
courage.
A springboard for you.
Yeah, so it's a nice way to start, is to honor my parents and say I'm very thankful, because I don't always tell this to them. So Mom and Dad, if you're listening, I'm very grateful.
That's very nice.
Yeah.
But how did you end up here in the UK?
So this was a decision I made later in life. So I was living at the time in Toronto with my ex-partner, my ex-life partner and business partner, Alex. And when I moved to Toronto, as grateful as I was that my parents immigrated to Canada, I realized intuitively and energetically that this is a chapter, not a whole life journey. And I kept looking at places where I could live. At one point, I had this idea to move to LA. And I remember again with Alex at the time, because we were together, we went to LA. We were looking for houses and thinking to move. And then again, intuitively didn't feel like the right decision. And then even before I was dating Alex, I went on a trip to London with a friend. I must have been 1920. And as soon as I landed in London, I just had this intuitive feeling and knowing, A, that I've lived here before, and B, that at one point I'm going to be here living, and also like living a great life, like in the area that I want, because I got very lucky at the time. My friend's friend hosted us at this beautiful flat in Knightsbridge. And, minutes from Harrods. And I was like, oh, I really like that. I could get used to this. So I do want to live in London, but I want to live like this. At the time, I was working at a restaurant, at a bank. I was like struggling for money, just supporting my immigrant parents. And I thought, how in the world will I ever manage to pull this off? And you know what? Dream big, and one day you find a way to get there. So a few years later, when Alex and I started our first business, Luxy Hair, we decided to take the plunge and move to London. And I never looked back. I'm so grateful.
Was it for the business?
No, it absolutely wasn't. It was absolutely for the lifestyle. Because at the time, we already had the business for a few years. I think it was we were 3 years into the business. At the time, we realized we need to get an office because the business was growing, expanding, the team was. And we knew like the more we expand, the more roots we're going to set in Toronto. And we didn't have children yet, so we just thought this would be the perfect time. In fact, it was my idea, but I'm so grateful Alex was on board. And then literally from the idea of moving to us actually physically moving here was 3 months. And then we just, did all the paperwork. And at the time, there was this visa called the Tier 1 Entrepreneurship Visa. And that's how we came, and now we're, British citizen.
Amazing.
Actually, Canadian and English.
It's such a big step. I literally cried when I received mine. It felt like I finally have a citizenship where I feel at home, which is crazy. I have other citizenship, but they're like random citizenships for me. I don't feel like I belong in those countries with my mentality, with similar international upbringing. But when I got British citizenship, I was like, I have the right to stay in the country where I feel like I belong as a human being. I think it's
so beautiful.
Yeah.
You also feel this way. I feel like, again, I've only lived in London, in the UK, so I can only speak of my experience of living in London. The beauty of London is that you get to be whoever you want here, and you get accepted for whoever you are. I've been now living here for more than 11 years, so I can really, truly say that. I've been exposed to many different people, experiences here, and I've always felt accepted. And that's such a beautiful thing to feel in a place, in an environment. And because I've been lucky enough and blessed enough to travel a lot and live in different places, that is not the case everywhere you go. So London is a very special place.
Right. And now you can stay as long as you want to. I want to talk about your career. I think you've built a phenomenal career, juggling it all. Could you tell us about Luxy Hair a little bit? Because that is the first milestone, as I understand.
Absolutely. Well, it's not the first business I had. Before that, actually, I was working at the bank, and I ended up in the bank as a result of me trying to escape high school. Because I was in my last year in high school, and I was like, I really don't want to be here. And then I ended up applying for this co-op position that allowed you to be outside of school and get credits.
Oh, wow.
So I was out of school all day, and I would get these credits working at a bank. And then after the co-op program finished and I finished the high school, they hired me. And although I didn't really connect with the bank environment, I really liked my team and the people there. So I stayed. And interestingly enough, that's where I ended up meeting my ex-partner, business partner and life partner, Alex Ikonn. So one day he came to the bank, we became friends, he got the job there. And then one day he got fired from the bank for having a side hustle. So fast forward a few years later. And when he got fired from the bank, because he actually wanted to stay in the bank and become an investment banker, his whole idea of like building a career in finance was shattered because he realized he's just a cog in the machine. Nobody really cares about who he is and his potential. Never mind the fact that he was at university, he was meeting all his targets at the bank, and he had a side hustle because he breached, the policies of the bank. He was out. And he said, forget about building my career in finance. I want to do my own thing. I've always known I wanted to do my own thing because I knew I just never fit into any systems. For example, when I was in school, always, like elementary school, high school, I just sat there thinking, when can I get out of here? And as I do the story about the high school as well, when I moved to Toronto, I just always felt like the odd one out. I don't want to, of course, for people who have real dyslexia, I'm self-diagnosed dyslexic. I've never been officially diagnosed with dyslexia, but I just have such a hard time following the rules and doing what everyone is doing. I always question the status quo. I always think outside of the box. And I think when by nature you are like that, you find it hard to fit your big personality and energy into like a narrow box that is designed for you. I want to design the box. Maybe it will be round. Maybe it will be big. Maybe it will be big. So anyways, going back to that story, when he got fired, I decided to quit the bank because I never wanted to be there in the first place. And then actually I had my first little venture, which was fashion styling, because I always loved fashion. And I always enjoyed being on camera. I started making some YouTube videos at the time. I had a little channel. Didn't really go anywhere because my intention was to have private clients, I wanted to work with people as a fashion stylist, come into their house and like go through their wardrobe and do color analysis. And I did it for about a year. And then I realized this is a different service. It's a business where you're offering a service. It's not really a true business unless you're selling a product. So it's
like self-employed.
Absolutely. Similar to being a lawyer or dentist and accountant. If you're sick, if you're unwell, if you're pregnant, you're not going to get paid if you're on holiday. So I quickly realized that as much as I enjoyed the actual work that I was doing, that this does not align with the vision of what I have for myself. And for me, my number one value in life is freedom. And what that means to me is like freedom to do what I want, with whoever I want, when I want, wherever I want. And unfortunately, you can't do that when you're self-employed because, again, you're constrained to a space and you have to provide the service to get paid. So then I ended up reading this book called The 4-Hour Workweek at the time. Alex was reading it as well. And we were so deeply inspired by all the stories that were read in that book, which are basically stories of entrepreneurs who have this lifestyle entrepreneurship mindset, because many people who are in business, they also become slaves to the growth of the business and expansion of the business. Of course, business, we were just talking about it earlier, any business you're going to do, quote unquote, it's going to be hard. I mean, hard maybe can be looked at as a negative word. It is and it's not, right? It's going to challenge you.
Challenging.
But if you enjoy it, if it aligns with your vision and values, it's going to feel aligned and it's not going to feel so hard, quote unquote hard. But yes, it will be, it's going to challenge you regardless. There's going to be ups and downs and things you don't know.
It's like going to the gym. It's
Absolutely.
Also challenging, but you enjoy the process.
Yes, so find the workouts that you enjoy. So find the business where you feel aligned with what you're doing, where you're enjoying learning new things all the time. So, basically, that's how the idea for the first business was born, because at the time, Alex proposed to me. And although I was very excited about the fact that he wants to build for life with me, we were in a place where we were both financially unstable. And I said yes. And I thought, we'll figure it out. And then I bought a pair of a set of hair extensions to wear to the wedding. Because from the engagement to the wedding, we had about a year to plan this thing. And I brought these extensions home, I put them on, and then when I put them on, I realized they looked so bad. They don't look natural, they don't blend with my hair. At the time, it cost me something like $200, which was
quite a lot.
Yeah, 13 years ago, more than 14 years ago. So I thought, what a waste of money when you already don't have much. In any case, it's a waste of money if it doesn't work. And I was complaining to my sister who was in the room. Alex was on his laptop in the room. And then he was like, what's clip-in hair extensions? I've never heard of this. Tell me more. And then I explained the whole concept. I showed him some YouTube videos of the girls before and afters. And it's such a transformational product for someone who has fine hair or short hair. You put in the extensions, especially the clip-in hair extensions, because it takes you minutes to install it. And out of a sudden, you look like a completely different person and you feel like a completely different person. And the light bulb went off. Alex said, why don't we do it? Why don't we create these clip and hair extensions that are thick and look natural? Because that was the main issue, is that they cost a lot, but they didn't blend with the hair that was thicker than like fine hair, which is, I think, most women. You know, of course, there's people with finer hair, thicker, you know. Long story short, we ended up creating the business. From the idea to the creation was literally 3 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
I
very
think when
fast.
you're really desperate, things happen. That's one of the biggest things I've learned in life, when a lot of people who want to become entrepreneurs ask me, how can I get started? I always tell them to use their desperation as a fuel. If you're not desperate, you won't get started.
Just start.
Simply because you're comfortable, right? You need to get yourself sometimes to a place where you quit the job or you leave your marriage, right? Like in life, it's almost like you have to put yourself in an uncomfortable position where you have no choice but to grow and expand. If you're too comfortable, you're not gonna take the plunge. So we quit our jobs, we started the business, in 3 months we launched, and it went like this. And yeah, in our first year, we made our first $1 million.
Wow.
Which for us, not coming from money, it was like flying to the moon. But it came with its own challenges, quite frankly. For the first time in my life, I experienced quite strong depression, anxiety, panic attacks. I didn't understand what was happening at the time because I've never
It can be very
felt
scary.
so like mentally and emotionally challenged, because on the outside, my life was absolutely perfect. I was 24. I just got married. I was making money, like great money, more money than I've ever made in my life. I could travel anywhere. I could buy anything. And yet I was the most miserable I've ever been in my life.
Why do you think that is?
So after a lot of research and years of like doing the inner work, and most importantly, reading this incredible book called The Body Keeps the Score, I learned that when you feel safe, your body starts releasing old trauma. And I think being in a relationship with someone who is so safe and secure for the first time, a lot of my old trauma started releasing. And the timing of everything happened, that it was the first year of marriage, the first year of business, the first year of many beginnings, me living, outside of my household, like with a new partner, because we only moved in together when we got married. So there were all these new experiences that were happening simultaneously, and they caused this reaction, which in hindsight was a really beautiful, moving, pivotal time in my life that really helped me mature and reassess, what are my values? Who am I? What am I here to do? Because I realized very quickly that even though on my vision board there was this, me buying all these expensive, luxurious things, flying business class or private, and yet you can have all these things, but if you're not feeling good on the inside,
It doesn't matter.
it means nothing. It absolutely means nothing. And the empathy that actually then comes for all the people, because when you're not grown up in an affluent upbringing, you're constantly raised with this messaging that once you have money, or people who have money, they're so happy and like they're much happier than you, they have it all. And then when you're there in such a quick period of time, which is a blessing, but also like it's a curse in disguise, but I think more it's still a blessing because you can do with that information what you want. You realize that, you get to tell your own story, you get to write your own story, you get to write your own book of values that you're going to live by. And I think for me, it was definitely such a big pivotal time in my life where even though Luxy Hair was growing, expanding in our YouTube channel, because at the time, for the first 4 or 5 years, the only marketing we used was us making YouTube videos. My sister and I, who was part of the business for the first 2-3 years of Luxy Hair, we were making YouTube videos just showing girls how to use the clip and hair extensions. And the business grew organically through these videos of us showing people how to use the product, and the social media content was pivotal in the growth of the business those first few.
And you must have
years.
learned so much that you still use nowadays.
Absolutely. I'm so grateful to live in a time where there's social media. I mean, people bash social media all the time, but just like anything else in life, we can say that about food, we can say that about travel, we can say that about sex, anything. If you abuse it, it's not good for you. But if you use it consciously and mindfully,
it's a tool.
You can create magic. So we used it instead of allowing it to abuse us. I think we're all slightly abused by social media for sure. I am also addicted like anybody else, because in order to understand social media, you need to use it as well. You can't completely ignore it like it's not happening and then be able to use it. You have to observe what you enjoy, how you consume, what you consume, to then create the content that is engaging and compelling. But I'm very mindful to create more and put out more than what I consume from social media. And it's been the biggest blessing, to be honest, on the journey, is to have a platform that allows you to have a voice and exposure to reach people. That's how you found me. And now here we are sitting in this beautiful room.
Amazing.
You get to interview me. I get to know you and learn about your inspiring story. You know, we find each other virtually first, but then that could lead to anything, a relationship, a friendship, a business partnership. I think ultimately, again, it's what we assign to these experiences in our life, and we get to assign anything we decide to. There's a lot of power in our narrative. We absolutely decide, yeah.
And how did Luxy Hair come to an end?
So we did it for 8 years. I think even in the first year, Alex and I both knew that this is a business that is a stepping stone onto something bigger that is more aligned with our values. When I went through my existential period, questioning my life and everything, I was extremely grateful for Luxy Hair, and I knew the blessing. Like, this doesn't happen. Like, this is 0.000.1 case of scenarios. I went to business school for a year before I dropped out, so I know the statistics of how often businesses fail. So I knew I was so blessed to be in a position to have a business that is growing, expanding, and yet I knew that there was a void. I knew that this business is not going to be able to fulfill all my desires and needs of who I am and what I want to bring into this world. So we knew that we're going to position ourselves at one point to sell this business. How long it's going to take, we didn't know, but 3 years before we got the right offer, we kind of started to think strategically, like, who is going to want to buy us? What are they going to look at? Also, how can we position ourselves so that when the sale happens, we don't have to stay with the business? Because I knew for sure I don't want to stay for 2-3 years and grow somebody else's business. I'd rather stay in the business, grow it, and then sell it later. It just didn't make sense for me. And Alex felt the same. And what is this magic number that we want to sell for? And again, it's so important to have a vision, because then 3 years later, we got the right buyer, eventually got the right offer. First one wasn't the right one. And we were bold enough to say, you know what, this is not enough. We don't want it. We're going to keep the business. We're going to grow the business until the right offer comes. And then they came back with the right offer, and we felt comfortable enough to sell. And then we sold the business. And then the moment was sold, at that point we already had intelligent change, and we can discuss a little bit how that was born, which I covered part of the story already, because I was going through my existential questions and crisis in my early mid-20s. I introduced so many different practices into my life, like mindfulness practices, meditation practice, gratitude practice that I was doing with my ex-partner, Alex. We would go every morning for gratitude walks that we learned from Anthony Robbins. I'm not sure if you're familiar. Yeah, I mean, he's big, but again, some people love him, some people don't. Tony Robbins, I would say, has been one of my biggest virtual mentors. I've attended his in-person events, but I feel like his online courses are so powerful. Get the Edge program years ago, when I was, again, like in my late teens, early 20s. Actually, Alex introduced me to Tony Robbins' work, and was life-changing. Again, it's all about
shifting. Do you think it works in our age, or it works for younger minds?
I think it works at any age.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because I think you have to be called to shift something in your mindset. And if you listen to someone's work and you feel like it triggers something positive, go deeper. Like right now, I don't feel called to consume his content, but I feel like I've absorbed so much and I already embody so much But I would love to actually do some of his smaller events. But anyways, that's a whole different thing. But yeah, so going back to that, so gratitude practice that we used to do took us too long. I mean, it was like an hour practice. It was beautiful at the time because, we'd go on this gratitude walk. We had a lot of time on our hands. It was just when we were starting our first business, Luxy Hair, and would say all these things we're grateful for, like the traveling with people who are doing also big things, right? Because at the time, all of our friends just graduated college, either didn't have jobs yet or had corporate jobs. We didn't know one friend who was an entrepreneur. Right now, I would say 80-90% of all my friends are entrepreneurs. It's not that I'm looking for friends who are entrepreneurs, but it just, you find people who are similar, and people who are similar usually do things that are a bit unconventional.
Yes.
Maybe they're artists, but they're doing their own different things. Although I do have like a couple of friends who work in corporate, but they're very happy at their corporate jobs. So anyways,
You went to your gratitude walks?
Exactly. So we used to do these gratitude walks, and we realized it's not sustainable, but we love the practice. So we condensed the practice into this simple tool where you would ask yourself 3 questions in the morning of like, what are you grateful for? Then reflect on the things you want to do today that will make your day great. And then also incorporating the power of affirmations, which is reaffirming to yourself what you want to embody day to day, which again can be such a powerful tool, because at the end of the day, people can say many things about affirmations, how it's this woo-woo practice. But in reality, anytime you talk to yourself, whether externally or internally in your head, you are using affirmations, whether you're aware of it or not. Again, you're telling yourself a story. So if you can tell a story that's disempowering or empowering,
you have to be your biggest supporter.
Why would you choose the one? So use it in your advantage. So this is just a moment in time, a moment in your day when you can be conscious about the story you're telling yourself. And your affirmation can be anything, again, you want to experience and embody. And then at the end of the day, you reflect on 3 amazing things that happen or 3 good things. If amazing sounds too strong of a word, it's just about reflecting.
Yeah.
Again, like reflecting on like, what are some small moments in your day? Maybe a smile you exchange with a stranger, maybe a really amazing meal, maybe walking in the park. It doesn't have to be like a ground shaking experience, but our life consists of these small magical moments. So it's about honoring those moments rather than getting to the end of your day and thinking, oh, I didn't do that. Because that's how we're conditioned. From an early age, we're conditioned to look at all the things we're not doing, that we're failing at, that we're like our shortcomings. When in reality, there's so many things about us that we're already doing, embodying, and can be grateful for. So again, it honors that time where you can reflect on all the good things. And from that place, you can build, grow, and expand. And then we've changed the journal over the years. The last question now is like, what did you learn today? Which I think, again, is a very powerful reflection to have at the end of the day. So that's the 5-minute journal in a nutshell. The original one was slightly different, but we printed 1,000 copies, and we thought, if no one buys this, we'll just give this to our friends and family for the rest of our days.
A lot of friends, yeah.
But it quickly flew. We also gifted it to our mentor, like again, virtual mentor, Timothy Ferris, who wrote The 4-Hour Work Week, the book that I mentioned early on today in our interview. And he was in the dedication because he was such an inspiration to our first business, Luxy Hair. And at the time, he was going through a very difficult emotional time. He loved the journal. He started using it. He featured it on his podcast, The Tim Ferriss Show, many times. We never paid him anything. He featured it in his book, Tools of Titans, in many interviews, and has been a big advocate for the 5-minute journal. And I think it's been really beautiful because I feel like, generally speaking, of course, women journal a lot more than men, and he normalized journaling for men. And I think that I'm extremely grateful to him for that, because I've been doing that on my social media for years, but obviously I'm the co-founder of the business, but for someone and a woman. So yeah, but for someone who is so influential and powerful and also very science-based to embrace such a beautiful, mindful practice has been really probably life-changing for many millions of people. So thank you, Tim Ferriss, if you're watching this interview. I hope you get to watch this.
I got your journal for my mom for Christmas.
Really? So, when was that?
This Christmas.
Oh, this Christmas. So how sweet.
Yeah, it's going to help her just to feel a bit more happy.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's truly, It's not hoping. The science backs it up. If she commits to it for minimum of 21 days. This is the way it works from scientific point of view, which I love understanding the science behind how anything works, because I also am very skeptical. I like embracing new concepts, but at the same time, I want to understand in my brain. And what happens in the brain when you practice something, anything, right? There's a part of our brain called reticular activating system, which is like a Google search. You can put in anything in that Google search. You can watch the news every day and look at all the horrible things that are happening in the world. And guess what? You're going to attract more of that. Or you can put in all the things you're grateful for first thing in the morning, instead of going on your phone or watching the news, or right before you go to sleep, instead of, again, going on your phone, scrolling or watching the news. You expose yourself to all these and focusing your brain on all these keywords that are positive, uplifting, empowering. And then guess what happens for the rest of the day? Your brain then focuses on all those moments and things and sees more of that. So naturally then you're starting to attract and experience more of that. It's simple as that. And the power of that, it has so many health benefits. Like it boosts your immune system. You get to sleep better, deeper. It improves your relationship with yourself, because when you're grateful, you compare less. When you compare less, again, you're focused on here and you're happier. And then all your relationships improve as a result of you having a better relationship with yourself. So it's such a simple, beautiful practice. And I always tell people, they don't need to get the journal. We are always been very open about the structure. And I mean, I just shared it in this interview. Like you can just get a blank notebook and start today.
Or you can just, I mean, I used your journal for a year or so. And I think that just became natural. It's me. I don't need a journal anymore. I use your cards though. So
thank you.
For dinner parties and things like that. But the journal, like I don't need to even write it. I wake up and I'm wired like that. I'm getting my flat white, and I'm just so grateful and I'm enjoying it so much. And it rains or not, I'm just so like I feel blessed in the moment of having the opportunity to have the coffee the way I want.
You rewired the subconscious mind. This is the result of that. Now, from personal experience, because like you, I go in and out of the habit. Sometimes, especially when I travel, I don't take my journal because I always travel with small carry-on, and I'm like, I don't have space because I need to put my clothes. And then, you don't do it for a week or two, and then you come back and you get out of the habit. I've noticed that effect can last for a period of time, but sometimes you can get back into this, again, negative cycle of judging yourself, comparing yourself. So it's okay to go through periods, absolutely. But just like you, when you do practice regularly for a period of time, it's like you start embodying gratitude. I personally never complain about the weather. If it rains, I'm like, I'm so grateful it's raining. Yeah. If it's gloomy, I'm like, it's so cozy. I'm not just saying this. It truly is my life experience. And I mean, you told me earlier you want to talk about my separation with my partner. But I'll skip to that part for a moment now, because as I was going through, Alex and I separated about a year and a half ago, more or less. As I was going through our separation and I was doing research on the effect of divorce and separation in people. And apparently it's one of the most traumatic experiences you're going to go through in your life, aside from like losing a loved ones or a loved one, because you're in this.
I read somewhere that divorce is
even worse.
Higher stress.
Interesting.
Than loss. Yeah, because loss is something like kind of out of your control, whereas divorce, although I think it is out of your control, but technically
to some degree is, and to some degree is not, right? You have to say goodbye, but it's even harder because you're making the decision, or let's say your partner made the decision, or maybe the decision is mutual. But I truly believe the reason for me it wasn't as difficult as it probably would have been for many people is the fact that I've been practicing gratitude for years and years now, more than 11 years. We started the business right before we moved to London. So the truth is, I would go through moments of like sadness and,
grief.
I call it, that's probably a better word. And as I would go there, I would I would not dwell too long in there. And I think that's the best part that gratitude can help you with, is that as you go down, which you always will, it's normal part of human experience to go through different emotions. You cannot, I don't want to say you cannot. Of course, many people maybe stay always on the high, but it's completely normal to have a range of emotions and feelings. But as you dip, you just don't stay too long there, because again, the gratitude brings me up. And even as I would be crying in those moments, I would be like, but I'm so grateful for my friends that they have, like I have my people supporting me.
Many things to be grateful
I have my child, even my partner, and the fact that I had those beautiful years of love and connection and the secure relationship that still makes me believe that this is possible. And again, without gratitude, you can't have that experience, because then again, you're focusing on the negative, right? Yeah. So this ability to always see the silver lining and see the glass half full really makes life much more effortless, and you just don't dwell on things for too long that are not serving you and not bringing you anywhere
I mentioned
better.
To you briefly, we had another guest. She's a mother of 7, and she's a very spiritual person, a religious person. And she said, it is our job to elevate every moment of life. And I thought that was so beautiful.
I love that.
You choose what to do with that moment. And, you know, divorce, as hard as it is, you can look at it in so many ways.
I'm someone that resonates with that message a lot. Anytime I go through a difficult time, even I remember when I was going through my depression, anxiety, panic attacks, as I was going through that darkness, I was thinking, I know one day when I'm on the other side, I can help people who are still going through it. And, you know, you're sitting there crying to yourself, thinking like, will I ever be on the other side? But part of you knows that it's like finding meaning in pain, finding meaning in sadness. Of course, you don't have to. Sometimes it's just pain and sadness, and that's okay too. But I guess I am someone who always tries to find meaning in everyday existence, you know? And yes, you get to choose, just like the guest that you had said. We all have so much power. Every single one of us. We are tiny little droplets, but if every little droplet shifts where it's going, then as a wave, we're going into a different place. It's human consciousness, right? And I do feel like right now, as human family, we are going through an evolution. I mean, we're always going through an evolution, and people can say overall, well, look at the world, there's so many horrible things happening. But in reality, there's always the shadow and the light. It's never just the light, right? So, but is there more light than the shadow? And I think that's the answer.
And what do you choose to focus on?
Absolutely. Yeah. There you go. I love that answer.
And you led us very nicely to your marriage. You worked with Alex. You still work with Alex. Mm-hmm. You know, you had also the Icons, as I remember, a channel, your own website. Mm-hmm. When was the turning point for you when you realized that it's not working?
So it was March, almost 2 years ago in March. I absolutely love and adore Alex. To this day, he's one of my best friends, and I think that will never change. But I realized that, and it's interesting because at the time my dad just had a stroke. He was in London, he had a minor stroke. And I think, I didn't see at the time that it was connected, but I think a lot of times where either our parents go through health issues or sometimes you lose a loved one, you start reassessing your own life, because whether you realize it or not, subconsciously, it makes you think of like the fragility of life. And this literally happened a month after my dad had a stroke. I was reflecting on our relationship, and as much as I love our relationship, and it's always been beautiful, peaceful, supportive, I realized in a moment that I'm no longer in love. As much as I love him, I'm not in love anymore. And it's a feeling. You cannot fake it. You cannot buy it. And I think many people realize that and they stay in a relationship, or they cheat, or they find their own solutions to the problem. For me, I couldn't stay any longer. I mean, it took months, of course, to come to a decision to separate from like coming to a place where you're like aware that you're no longer in love. Like this is more of a companionship rather than a romantic relationship where I feel a certain way that I need to feel in my romantic relationship. And it was a very difficult thing to then bring up to my best friend and my partner. Because like, how do you quote unquote break the person's heart that you love so much. But I don't look at it as breaking a person's heart, because I think you owe it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you owe it to your partner to be honest and truthful. And I think we're still in a relationship, but our relationship shifted to a more platonic relationship, friendship right now. And
co-parent.
And we will always co-parent. You know, that's something you cannot change once you're a family of more than two. But it was a very difficult transition to go through. Of course, we're still going through it. I think it takes time. But yeah, many tears, many conversations. I was very lucky because Alex is someone who is a very secure, kind, conscious person, conscious man. And I was very blessed that he made it easy for me. He didn't blame me. He didn't shame me. In fact, he honored and respected my decision, which was a very difficult decision to make, especially as a woman and as a mother. As I was battling with that decision, and I think for any woman listening who may be in a similar situation, I think because we have a family and we have a child, I was like, no, I have to stay in it because of her, because I can't break the family, because then I'm the person I'm the bad one to break this, because then she's gonna grow up, you know, in some way damaged because of this. And then I would question my own, where is this coming from? Is this my thoughts or this is a conditioning? And I realized these are layers of conditioning that I personally don't subscribe to, because I want to raise my child in a way where she sees me authentically showing up for myself first. If I were to stay in a relationship where I no longer feel like it serves me or it meets my needs, I'm lying to myself. Then I'm modeling a relationship of lie for the sake of what? A fake happiness. I think our kids are so wise. They're so aware. They can read our micro expressions. Have I stayed in this relationship? I just imagined that one day. I remember thinking to myself, okay, let me just pretend I'm staying. What's going to happen to me over time? Because I'm not being true to myself. I'm going to get depressed. I'm going to have to take antidepressants, or I'm going to resent her because I'm going to know that I've stayed only for her. And then that's going to ruin my relationship with her. But then I also thought, what if I take her out? Imagine I never had a child. What would I have done? I would have left.
But I am divorced now for a very long time. And I can tell you it's the best decision I've done for my son ever. He has two happy parents.
Absolutely.
Modeling to him that they do what they like. You know, we live in different countries. He gets the best of us. And I think although maybe he sees his father more rarely because I had to move to another country, but he sees a very happy, accomplished, you know, father. And that instills confidence in him to grow up to a happy life. I think if you stay together and your marriage is unhappy, then what are your children looking forward to? Is that a marriage they want to grow up to? And unfortunately, my parents were not so happily married. And to me, to this day, marriage is like this dark thing. And I don't want it to be a dark thing for my son.
I completely agree and resonate with what you're saying. I sadly don't have not even one positive example of marriage. And I've met so many people.
That's very sad.
It is very, very sad, you know. Growing up, I mean, growing up, being surrounded by uncles, aunts, everybody had so much drama and toxicity that I couldn't look at one relationship and be like, I want to be like them when I grow up. So then I did that. I feel like my relationship with my ex-partner, Alex, this is the relationship to have. When it was beautiful, and it was kind and romantic, and it was what it was until it wasn't anymore. And then we honored the end of the chapter. But I have a very high standard for what it can be. And unless I have that, I'm happy on my own as well. And I think, again,
it's a great thing to model to your daughter.
It's to be secure. It's to be full and to be whole. But having said that, it's not easy to go from a secure, and I'm sure you know that because you've gone through the process, to go from that secure relationship where, you know, you have a partner that meets your emotional needs and is there for you and loves you and does all these things for you. It's very comfortable and safe to go on your own and start from zero. So it's been quite a journey.
Yeah, it's also a flatmate, you know. I mean, just doing chores and things like that. I have a lot of questions about
Go
this.
ahead.
But the last question,
I'm here for it.
the marriage part. I mean, what was the transition of co-parenting in one household and then co-parenting in two different households? Like, how is that like?
How has that been? I feel like we're still figuring it out. At the moment, I would say my experience is very much single parenting. I know Alex does his best. However, he's also living his truth, which is he loves traveling. And the blessing with our business is that he can work from anywhere. I could as well, but I have a child who goes to school now and I am grounded. So I'm very aware of the fact that if I didn't have a child, I'd be nomadic right now. I'd be traveling in Bali. I'd go a few months here, a few months there. Whereas, if you commit to a traditional education, which we have made the choice, again, I'm not a victim. This is a very empowered choice I have made because she's happy. I'll keep her in an education like that for now, and she's happy, but that means I have to stay grounded. And yeah, I'm basically, I have her, I would say, more than 90% of the time. But when Alex is here in London physically, he does his best to be present. And sometimes they take trips together, just the two of them, which I think has been amazing for their relationship. And, she's super happy because, again, she accepts him for who he is. We have these very open conversations where she says, why does Papa travel so much? And I say, because it makes him happy. And we accept other people how they are. We're not here to change someone and fit them into the mold of what they have to be for us. You have very different parents, but this is teaching her contrast as well.
It's very similar in our household. But for you, being a single parent.
How has it been?
Yeah.
To be honest, I've always been like more of a full-on parent. Alex, from the moment of when Alexa was probably about 6 months, he was like, I'm going to the office. I need my space. Before that, we were very much like in the house together. But I understood like it's not for everyone to be like in the house with a child 24/7 before they go to school or a nursery. And that was very difficult. The first transition when he went back to the office and I decided to work from home, I was like, oh, this feels so lonely. But now, of course, it's different. She's older. So yes, so I've been single parenting in a way, more or less, because then, fathers come home at like 6:37 and then the child goes to bed around an hour later. So as a mom, and many moms listening to this, whether you are in a relationship or not.
It didn't change much.
Like for me, it changed a tiny bit, but not so drastically. Other things changed. Sleeping in my bed alone, that was something to get used to.
Yeah.
Now I love it. But like at first it was scary and sad. But the part about raising her alone, it was not that much different, to be honest. No. In fact, now I have my own time sometimes, which is when they go away for a week or like 5 days, to be honest, they have never gone away for a week. But I think the longest was 5-6 days. I was so grateful to have this time to myself. Have we been still in a relationship? I don't think I would have allowed myself that kind of freedom. I would have gone.
Maybe next time.
Yes, next time I have to do things differently. Absolutely. I think I'm learning these lessons and I'm very blessed because I'm aware. I'm like, you didn't need to leave a relationship to make time for yourself. Like you said, next time, if you have another child, or not, like just choose to make time for yourself. I think I've learned a lot, leaving my relationship with Alex, I've learned a lot about becoming more secure on my own. And I remember I came across many different therapists who go deep in this topic. And one of these therapists, I forget her name right now, she's out of Toronto, because there's a few that I love. She mentioned, can't remember the name, but anyways, if I do, we'll quote her. But she said something like, if you are, for someone who is in a secure relationship, 50% of your free time, we're talking about free time, okay? Not including your work hours. Yeah. Free time should be you doing you with your friends or you doing your favorite hobbies, painting, pottery, dancing, whatever makes you happy on your own without your partner. And if I'm honest, if I look at my free time, I spend probably 90% of my free time with Alex. I think when you do that, you become enmeshed in your relationship and you become slightly codependent or severely codependent, depending on your personality and dynamic. And I think overall that is not probably the optimal relationship you want to have. So yeah, that's been a very big
a good
takeaway.
takeaway for me.
Yeah,
too.
huge.
Yeah.
Like
I'm
50% is a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm not.
I would say I'm like 20, and I'm happy. Like I feel good
That's
about
great.
being 20.
Yeah,
But
20 is a lot as well. So I
yeah.
applaud you for that. 50 is a lot.
It's a lot.
Like it would have to be like a lot of conscious, space.
Yeah.
But I think it can be very good
in
for
the long
everything.
term. Yeah, for sure.
But maybe something to build up to.
Alexa seems, Instagram is Instagram, but she seems like a very confident, happy child. What's your parenting philosophy?
So from the moment of when I got pregnant, I was very conscious about the way I want to raise her, which is with a lot of unconditional love and honoring her as a separate soul who just came through me to live in this world. I don't get to decide who she will become. I get to hold space and create the most conducive environment for her to become what she desires to become. So for me, that's always been very clear. One of the books, I had a friend over yesterday, she's pregnant, and she was asking me, what books did you read as a pregnant woman or when Alexa was younger? I literally read maybe a few, and one that really stood out, I think it was by Magda Gerber. It's called Self-Confident Baby, because it really resonated with the way I wanted already to bring up Alexa, which is to allow your child to lead, allow them to make decisions from an early age, as small as when they're a toddler, you bring them to a playground. Don't guide them where they should go in the playground. This is the only space where they get to choose safely.
Yeah.
But I see, even when I would go with the grandparents, they'd be like, we should go to the swing.
Oh, the Eastern European grandparents is a bit,
She gets to decide where she wants to go. Maybe she doesn't want to do the swing today. She wants to go on the seesaw. Yeah. Maybe she just wants to stare at a child for an hour. Let her be, but that's not how we've been conditioned. So I think the reason she is so self-confident, now she's 8, is partly her, of course, her personality, her soul, her energy that she came with. I think it's 50-50. And then the environment that I've been doing my best to consciously create for her. And she gives me a lot of valuable feedback now that makes me grow and challenge. Like, for example, sometimes after school, she will complain about certain thing about school. And my personality, I'm very solution oriented. So I'll be like, well, but this is what we can do. This is what you can do. This is how other people live. I make her see, like, I try for her to be grateful for what she has. And she said recently to me, well, mommy, sometimes I share something just for you to listen and not tell me anything. This is why I don't want to say anything anymore. And I thought, oh my God, what valuable feedback to get from an 8-year-old. I said, thank you, Alexa. Thank you for making me aware. This is a pattern I have. When my loved ones share their problems and challenges, I naturally want to go and rescue.
Help them. Yeah.
It's my coping mechanism. But you're absolutely right. Maybe you just want to be heard or hugged. And thank you for that. I will do my best to be conscious of that and just hold space for you, because I think sometimes that's all we're needed for. The other person just wants to vent, and they will come up with their own solutions that will be even more empowering than us giving them the solutions. And I know that's my blind spot. I mean, it's not blind.
I have the same
anymore because I'm aware of it.
Thanks to Alexa.
But yeah, something that, we can be aware of.
And with age, I think this just becomes bigger. Like, as they are teenagers, we really need to give them that space to just tell us and watch them and not break that trust. I struggle with this as well, because running a business, that's what you do, right? Your employees come to you, you come, you solve the problem. But with children, you just have to be, and it's hard. And
I do that in small things. I don't know if it's because I have one child. You can probably resonate. For example, she'll ask me for a snack. I'll bring her the snack, but actually she's an 8-year-old. She can get her own snack. But I take pleasure in doing that. Yeah. So I'm a bit challenged now, where I realize I need to, at one point, draw the line, because she's in a place where she's fully capable to open the fridge, wash the apple, the orange, slice it all up, and make it up for her. But I enjoy bringing her the snack after school. So I wonder how, because your child is a bit older, where do you draw that line where doing things for them, also empowering them to do things for themselves?
Because I live with a partner now who is not the father of my child, I think that's been very helpful, because he sees our relationship and my child without the bias.
Yes.
Now my child actually calls him a father, so they bonded into that relationship. But in the beginning, he was like, what are you doing? You know, like, he's a 9-year-old boy. Why are you like running after him? Like, why are you going into shower together at some point? A few years ago, he was like, that's not good. That's not good. I mean, you love him. That's what you do. But no, he's a boy. Close the door and let him do his thing.
Because for us, they're still our baby.
I'm like, but it's my baby. Yeah, like, I'm a Jewish mom, so I'm like overly mommy owl.
A little smothery.
I'm really over the top, and it's my only child. I'm a single mom.
I get it.
But he's been very helpful, you know.
Yeah, that perspective.
Yeah, and like put him in football and like, you know, just let him be a little bit more, and creating that space where I sometimes thought I would feel guilty, you know, not doing some things. But actually, the less I do, the better it is for my son. So.
Absolutely. I think the biggest measure for me of successful parenting is how independent our children will be once they are of legal age.
It's our job.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. Emotionally, financially, physically, how safe and secure they feel without us being there. To me, that will be my measure of whether I did well or not. You know, is she independent? Can she cope on her own in this world? Because the truth is, they will have to get out of the nest sooner or later.
Yeah.
And this is something now I started conditioning into her as well. I literally tell her, I say, Alexa, the most important thing in life is that you can handle on your own without mommy, daddy, without a man, you know, especially as a woman. I've had some cases of close people in my life recently where, you know, this woman is in her early 40s and she's not independent. And yes, it partly is the failure of the parents to make it in a way too easy for her and too soft and comfortable, where that woman was not able to come to a place of becoming a full-grown woman. It doesn't mean she cannot get there yet. 40 is still very young. Yeah. Exactly, right? But I told her, like, this is an example. And like, I wish for you, and my biggest desire is that you learn to become independent and you never depend on me and Papa or a man in your life for money, for feeling emotionally secure. I want you to feel full. And again, she's a young person, but I feel like it's going there because sometimes she'll hear her say these things to her friends or repeat these messages.
It's all getting there, so, even when we don't see it. I'm sure it's... But I think it's not so much what we say, but what we do, and
Absolutely.
You are being a great example.
Thank you so much.
I want to talk a little bit what it's like being single.
So single is a word I don't use a lot, actually. Yeah, I love that you actually started with that, because a lot of times, you know, people will ask me that question and I'm like, I'm not single. I'm just open and free. And they're like, why? But I like to be different with words as well. Like, for example, even raising Alexa, I never used the word no. I was like, I can't let you do something. So I'm like very conscious about the words. And the reason I have a little bit of a trigger with the word single is that applies that I'm on my own and I'm alone. I don't feel like I'm alone at all. I feel so held and supported by my friends and family, chosen family mostly because I live in London. I do love my biological family, but we've been long distance for many years. But I have men and women in my life who love me so much and are always in my space that sometimes I'm like, guys, I need some of my own time. So I don't feel single alone, but yes, I'm open and free. How does that feel to be in that place of like full freedom? I feel great. To be honest, I forgot how good it is to be in that place, because I think when you are in a relationship, naturally, you start molding into something that is the two of you, especially when you share space. You start listening to similar music. The travel plans are something that will make both of you happy. The environment, like the art choices.
There's a lot of compromise.
Yeah, it's normal. That's a relationship. And when you're just in a relationship with yourself, you're like, ooh, what do I want to eat today? What do I want to listen to? I love myself. I realize how much I actually love myself, and how little I am, my joy and happiness is impacted by whether I am in a relationship with a man or not.
That's great.
And that's been a great realization, because after being in a relationship with a great, amazing, loving partner for so many years, I thought like, oh my God, how am I going to survive on my own emotionally? Man, it's been fine. I realized I can meet a lot of my own needs. Of course, there's certain needs you need a romantic partner for, but for everything else, my incredible friends help me co-regulate. But most importantly, I love my own company. And I love, traveling now, even did a couple of trips on my own. Of course, I'm still with other people, but like even getting to a place that is new on my own and then making new friends at that place.
And it's
a new experience.
Your choice where to go.
Absolutely.
Which is nice.
And I realize I'm making such different choices. I'm going to places I've always wanted to go, but my ex-partner didn't care to go. So he didn't plan those trips because he was like, if you want to go there, you plan it. And I'm like, well, it's easier because he's planning things and like, I'll go with the flow. But now I'm challenged to make my own plans or manifest these things in my reality where actually you mentioned you're from Latvia, and literally 3 days ago, I've always wanted to go, but it's not a place that is so popular. I have a Latvian friend who sent me an itinerary. She's planning a get together with all her friends to show them her beautiful country. And I thought that's brilliant. And then last night, another friend who is Lithuanian invited me to Lithuania. So I'm like, this year I'm going to go to Latvia and Lithuania.
Fantastic.
And again, this is something.
Invite me.
Most likely, perfect. We'll go together. Most likely my ex-partner wouldn't care to go, unless maybe he was invited by some place for an event or work. But like, I like the places that are not well known. I like the places that are not so popular or necessarily luxurious. I like nature. I like a full range of things. And I'm discovering all these things about myself that I've forgotten. That's been really beautiful. So I'm enjoying this time. I absolutely so relaxed and in no rush to get anywhere. Yeah, it's been fun.
That's great. You said being alone in your bed has been a little bit challenging at first. For me personally, like I've been a long time with my partner. We've been dating since school. We had a child together. And then I was like, I'm going to have sex with another person. It was a big thing inside me. It was unimaginable at that time, after being so long with one partner, to invite another person in your bed. How has that been for you?
I love that we're going deep here and that you feel so comfortable to go there. I love that because I think these are very important conversations to have. And I think, you mentioned that earlier off camera, that a lot of these conversations never make it on the screen or on the audio, but we talk about these things as girls or with our guy friends. Doesn't matter. These are very important topics, and we need to normalize these conversations because then more people can talk about them and it can become easier for all of us because we all question these things. And how has it been? I was, what is it called? I was celibate for 13 months after the relationship because I really felt like I needed that time and space. And then I was like, okay, I think I'm ready to get out of my celibacy. It was a huge step for sure. The right person came into my life at that moment to break my celibacy. I felt like I was ready. And I met a different version of myself. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. This can be fun and different. And
because you have to rediscover it with the new partner, it's different.
Completely. So I'm not currently seriously dating anyone, but I've been out there exploring and meeting different versions of myself. And I think that in itself is an invaluable experience. And something that I went on a date with this guy and he said something really interesting, which I think for a man has been very advanced. He said that I would rather date someone who has slept with 40 guys than someone who slept with 2 guys.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I was like, wow, explain why. And he goes, because the woman who has had more experiences would have known herself and known what ticks her body, what she likes in terms of pleasure. Because we women are so uneducated when it comes to our own pleasure. A lot of times we depend on the man to come in and show us and fill that cup of ours. But in reality, these moments of gap when you have in-between relationships, whether you're self-pleasuring or you're discovering different partners, you're learning a lot about your body and what you like, what you don't like. You're like, okay, this is not for me. Or this, I don't have polarity in chemistry here. I'm sorry. This is going to be platonic. I've been in a situation like that where you kiss, you make out, and you're like, no, there's nothing there. You're a lovely person,
Not for me.
but absolutely zero polarity. It's just like, it's okay. And this is how you get to know yourself. And that has been super invaluable. And I think I encourage all women out there who are in between relationships or just maybe are choosing to be on their own to expose themselves and not be afraid to go out there to explore a bit. You don't have to go all the way. You can take it as far as you're comfortable to take, but to get out of the comfort zone. Because I think when I took that time, yes, I honored myself, but also part of it was like me being a little also scared to
13 months
Yeah.
must have been first time for you for so long not to have sex.
Yeah, because I've been in a relationship with same man for 14, 15 years and very active. So that's a long time. But then I've learned the power of self-pleasure as well, which I've never done. I mean, I've done very rarely.
I bought a few tools after I got
To be honest,
them.
I still haven't bought anything. I'm
no?
very much organic, but I've learned so much about self-pleasure and discovered things that have been like, wow, like groundbreaking for me. And I know better my body, which now makes me more sexually embodied, which now makes me more confident partner, makes me more secure. So it's a great for the next partner that I will be with. So I absolutely agree with that lovely guy that I was on a date with, because I just thought how wonderful for him not to shame women. Because he said, how come a man who sleeps around is called a stud, but a woman is then shamed into quote unquote a slut? When in reality, I'm not saying you have to go sleep around with 40 guys, but if you want to explore and try different things,
it's not about the amount of guys.
Yeah, it's not about the number.
Of
course, you have to feel the right chemistry and connection and do it safely that you don't get pregnant or get STDs, but that you can safely explore that part of yourself. Every man and every relationship will hold a different mirror where you will see a different side of you. And this, I believe, is how you integrate yourself. And again, you don't have to go all the way. It could be just going on a date sometimes and seeing how you're getting triggered in a conversation with a man who is maybe absolutely different, someone you've never ever gone on a date like or have been in contact with. I've had these experiences where I'm like, this guy is so masculine. I've never, but I feel comfortable now to be out there with him because I am in my power. Whereas before, maybe I would have picked someone a bit more feminine. Now I find that the guys I'm attracted to or I'm attracting are much more in their masculine. And I think it's because I'm more comfortable in my feminine, but also I own my healthy masculine. I don't know if that makes sense to you, how much you know the topic. But
you have your strengths.
Yes, I can protect myself. And that's why I feel comfortable I don't need to choose someone who is weaker than me in some ways, because I know that I can stand up for myself and I can hold it. And it's been fascinating because they're so different. It's not the man I would have been attracted in my early 20s, when I got into that relationship. So much learning. And it's really fun, but definitely sometimes scary as well or uncomfortable, right? But you got to push yourself out of the comfort zone.
When somebody holds a mirror to you, you discover new parts of yourself, and it's a vulnerable experience.
Or sometimes feeling emotions for someone new you met, and you're like, ooh, like, I really like this guy. Like,
where is it going?
Yeah, like, what, your anxiety gets triggered. And then again, you're meeting a different version of yourself where you're like, I've never felt anxious before in this way. For example, I was very blessed with Alex because he's a very secure partner. Also, he's a Taurus. I'm very much into astrology, and I think elements, not so much what you are as a sign, but whether you're earth, fire, air, water, makes a big difference. So earth sign is very grounding and stable. So as a Taurus, he's always been like very loyal, very grounding. If I ever messaged him, he'd message me back right away. Never triggered my anxiety. And then I have other experiences where the guys are more like airy because they're a Gemini or Aquarius. And I'm like, it's been hours. It's been more than a day. Where is this? Like your anxiety gets triggered. And then you're like, ooh, okay.
That's
Let's
another
look
way.
at this.
Yeah.
What is this?
Are you fire?
I'm a fire. Yeah, I'm a Leo. What about you?
Leo as well, yeah.
I When is your birthday?
20th of August.
20th. So you're at the very end of
I
the,
have
yeah, you
some
just
Virgo.
made it.
Yeah.
But Virgo is a wonderful sign as well. They're builders. They're like larger than life. So great combination to have. Yeah. I'm at the beginning of Leo. So I have the nurturing of the Cancer as well. Yeah.
Great. Well, I just wanted to say you look amazing. You look super great. And on Instagram, you show a great commitment to your workouts and you're like, you stay true to them and you exercise a lot. But could you tell us a few tips on how to stay in a great shape that you are in?
I think such a great question. Again, it all starts with you, your relationship to your body. This relationship, like self-love is a big word, but how do you practice self-love? And for me, it's mindful eating and mindful movement, whatever that means to you. I realized over time, for me to be committed to a workout, I have to enjoy it or anything really, right? Relationship, like you have to enjoy the process. So I found a program called Femnativa. This is not sponsored at all. Actually, one of my subscribers recommended it to me. And I'm so grateful. I was literally thinking about that subscriber. I don't remember who it was. How grateful I am because I've started the workouts more than 2 years ago. Actually, less than 2 years, but more or less almost 2 years now. And I love them because I can do them on my yoga mat at home with minimal weights. It's 30, 40 minutes, so something anyone can do. Before I worked with a virtual PT, my workouts were longer, much more difficult, and I didn't see as many results as I do now. I'm in the best shape I've been since, I had Alexa. So like, I feel like my body is completely looks the same as how I was pre-pregnancy. And so, yeah, regular workouts. I work out 4 or 5 days a week and I use that program. I also run maybe once or twice a week and I'm just active. I walk a lot. I get at least 10,000 steps a day. When it comes to eating, this is something I realized also at the time of separation. This was an interesting learning. I never realized that when something maybe is missing in your relationship, you can overeat. And I don't think I was overeating a lot, but I realized the moment I honored myself and I chose to separate, the way I ate changed. And I was very hyper aware of that. I became so much more intuitive and I eat way less. And it's not because I'm trying to lose weight. It's just I'm very hyper aware that I'm not hungry and I'm not going to stuff myself with it. But I realized I used to eat more. So then I was thinking, was I feeling myself with food because something was missing? It's an interesting question to reflect on.
For me, it's a really hard one because I was very skinny after my divorce, but now clearly not.
You're in
I'm okay,
fine shape,
but I was
but
like
we can
20
have goals.
kilos less. And then, but I don't think something is wrong with my relationship.
I don't think
right
sometimes
now.
it's a relationship,
Maybe
but
he eats
something
and
else
I eat,
maybe.
like with him, Like,
yes, that's another thing. Alex is a hedonist and he admits that. He loves, when we go to restaurants, he orders a lot.
Yeah.
I am not like that.
I could even not go to dinner,
Exactly. But I ate a lot more because I was with him all the time. So naturally, you eat because you share. So I eat way less because I'm like, I'm not hungry. I'm not going to eat. So simple as that. My life is very simple.
Follow your body.
Yeah. I'm like, I wake up, I'm hungry. Some days I'll make myself an elaborate breakfast. And some days I'm like, I really don't feel like eating. So I'm just going to have a matcha or tea. And I honor that. And I've seen the reflection of that is me shrinking, not because I'm trying to fit into no, it's just because I'm honoring myself. And this is who I am, truly am authentically. And that's been interesting. And I think tuning into that authenticity while in your relationship as well is really important, because sometimes we do that because we want them to love us and we're like, don't want to hurt their feelings. But it's okay to be like, you know what? I'm not going to have the dessert. You have the dessert. You feel like it, enjoyed my love. But you know what? I actually don't feel like it. But it's hard. I've been there for years. I know it. And also he's a big guy. He needs to eat a lot more.
Yeah, guys do need to eat more. It's
absolutely.
Yeah.
But I love my new realization and how I live my life now, because I love the body I'm in now. It more reflects my authentic self.
It's good to feel good in your skin. Yeah. It's the shelf.
Nothing else,
soul,
I feel
right?
like. Yeah, absolutely. This is the body is our temple, as they say.
Beautiful. Closing reflections?
I think for anyone listening to this podcast, first of all, thank you for sticking through. I really appreciate you being on the other side there. Something that I've been reflecting on perhaps is that authenticity is the highest frequency. And maybe a question all of us right now in 2025 can ask ourselves is that how can we be more authentic in all of our interactions, including, most importantly, our own interaction with ourselves. Because the truth is, when you're authentic, you don't need to work hard at anything. You know, you're coming to do public speaking, or you're coming on a podcast episode, or you have to show up and do a presentation at work, or just work with your clients facing or virtually. It doesn't really matter. When you are doing your best from a place of authenticity, you don't actually have to think at all. You're channeling this energy. However, it does take that intention and then, of course, filling layers of the conditioning. You're going to have to go through that. And it's a journey. I've been on that journey for many years. For me, probably started even before I mentioned that difficult time in my life when I went through depression, anxiety. But I feel like I have a very spiritual mother, so she's been bringing that into my world since I can remember myself. But if you're just starting on this journey, also give yourself grace that this is a journey and we're all on this journey, and it will take for as long as we're alive. We will continuously peel the layers of conditioning that we've received as small children as we live through life. And the goal is to get to the core of the truth. And that's going to be different for all of us. But that's the beauty of life, is that we're all different and beautiful in our own way.
That's 3 questions and you answered them all in one. So
that's what happens, right? You start like beautiful serendipitous things happen when
authenticity is a good 2025 word.
I love that.
I hope that's what's going to happen in these conversations.
I'm glad that resonates with you.
Thank you so much for coming.